Welcome to our channel Folk Street Mystery, where every story begins in shadow and every clue goes under a single street lamp. Step inside. The next case is already waiting. Don't forget to share thoughts. Your feedback keeps the mystery alive. Now let's begin.
Nero Wolfe and the Cartographer's Error, a classic noir detective mystery. Chapter 1, The Map That Shouldn't Exist. I was balancing a sheaf of routine correspondence against my better judgment when the doorbell rang. It was a thin, nervous ring, like the finger behind it was apologizing for existing. Fritz answered, because Fritz always answers, and because Nero Wolfe never does anything that might require him to stand up when sitting is an option. From the hall came a man's voice, tight, breathy, edged with panic, and then Fritz's polite bass, reassuring but immovable. I gave Wolfe a look. He was in his chair, the red leather one that had been molded to his vast shape by years of faithful service, eyes half-lidded, hands folded on his stomach like a Buddha who had given up on enlightenment and settled for beer. "A client," I said. Wolfe opened one eye. "Obviously. He sounds scared." "Many people are scared, Archie. Most have the sense not to ring my bell." That was when Fritz reappeared, ushering in a man who looked as if he'd been chased uphill by bad news and lost. He was in his 40s, maybe, with the pallor of someone who lives under fluorescent lights and the posture of someone who expects to be contradicted by footnotes. He clutched a flat leather portfolio as if it were a flotation device. "This is Mr. Daniel Haversham," Fritz said. "He requests your professional attention." Wolfe sighed, but waved a hand. "Sit down, Mr. Haversham. You have interrupted nothing of importance." That was a lie. Wolfe's post-lunch beer had been delayed by exactly 3 minutes, and that kind of thing left scars. Haversham sat on the edge of the chair, portfolio on his knees. He looked at me, then back at Wolfe, as if trying to decide which of us was more dangerous. "I'm a cartographer," he said finally. Wolfe's eyebrow lifted a millimeter. That was the equivalent of a standing ovation. "Indeed. I work with historical maps. Urban development. Archival reconstructions." "Archie," Wolfe said without looking at me, "observe how he uses words to avoid saying why he is here." I grinned. "I'm observing." Haversham swallowed. "I published a map. Last month. A reconstruction of Lower Manhattan, circa 1890. And?" Wolfe prompted. "And there's an error." I waited for thunder. It didn't come. "A mistake," I said. "Join the club. I once trusted a cabbie who said he knew a shortcut." Haversham shook his head sharply. "No. Not a mistake. An error." Wolfe's eyes opened fully now. "Explain the distinction." "The map is accurate. Painstakingly so. Street lines, property boundaries, easements. Everything verified against city records." "Yet erroneous," Wolfe said. "How intriguing." Haversham leaned forward. "The error is not in what's shown. It's in what isn't." That earned him my full attention. It also earned him Wolfe's silence, which is much heavier. "There's a parcel of land," Haversham continued. "A narrow strip, only a few yards wide. According to the records, it shouldn't exist. It was supposedly absorbed during a rezoning in 1902. But on your map," Wolfe said, "it remains." "Yes. Because the rezoning documents were amended. After the fact." I shifted in my chair. "Amended by who?" Haversham's mouth tightened. "That's what I came to you to find out." Wolfe considered him for a long moment. I could practically hear the mental gears engaging. Finally, "Why do you believe this concerns murder?" Haversham flinched. "Because 2 men have already asked me to retract the map." "Men?" I said. "What kind of men?" "The kind who don't ask twice." Wolfe nodded once. "And yet you did not retract it." "I couldn't," Haversham said. "Doing so would draw attention. Scholars notice retractions. Silence is safer." is it? Wolfe asked mildly. Havisham opened the portfolio and slid out a single sheet. Not the map itself, but a photographic detail, an enlargement of a few city blocks, old street names etched in elegant lines. One line, thinner than the rest, ran where no line should. This strip, Havisham said, tapping it with a trembling finger. If it exists legally, then everything built over it for the last 50 years is compromised. I whistled softly. That's a lot of real estate. Yes, Havisham said. And a lot of powerful people. Wolfe leaned back. And you believe someone will kill you for it? I believe, Havisham said carefully, that someone already has killed for it. A colleague of mine. Elias Monroe. He was reviewing the same archival material. He died 3 weeks ago. Accident? I asked. Officially, Havisham said. Fell down a subway stairwell. Wolfe's lips compressed. And unofficially? He called me the night before. Said he'd found something wrong. Something that shouldn't be there. Wolfe closed his eyes again. Archie. Yes. Tomorrow, you will visit the address where Mr. Monroe died. You will also acquire a copy of this map. Havisham exhaled, relief flooding his face. You'll take the case. I will consider it, Wolfe said. That depends on whether you are murdered before dinner. Havisham blinked. What? I am being facetious, Wolfe said. Partially. The doorbell rang again. This time it was sharp, insistent. We all froze. Fritz went to answer it. I stood, hand drifting instinctively toward the desk drawer where Wolfe kept a gun he pretended not to approve of. A moment later, Fritz returned. Alone. A wrong address, he said. Wolfe opened his eyes. Mr. Havisham, you will remain available. You will not leave the city. You will not alter your routine. That's impossible, Havisham said. My routine is alterable, Wolfe said. Unlike death. Havisham stood, shakily. Thank you. Both of you. After he left, Wolfe sat in silence. The orchids upstairs waited. So did the beer. Well? I said. Wolfe opened his eyes. The map is not the problem, Archie. Let me guess, I said. It's the people who don't want to be found on it. Precisely, Wolfe said. And someone has already begun erasing. I looked at the photographic detail again. A thin line. Easy to miss. Easy to kill for. Outside, a taxi honked. Somewhere downtown, the city shifted its weight, hiding old bones under new concrete. And for the first time that day, I had the uncomfortable feeling that the ground beneath us wasn't quite where the map said it was. Chapter 2, A Death Drawn in Ink. If Wolfe had been a cat, he would have knocked the map off the table just to see how it fell. As it was, he sat immobile in his chair, staring at the photographic detail Havisham had left behind, as if it might confess under sufficient pressure. I stood by the window, watching West 35th Street do its daily impersonation of civilization, taxis coughing, pedestrians arguing with the weather, a delivery truck blocking traffic like it had a permit from God. So, I said. You want me to go look at a stairwell? Yes, Wolfe said. I want you to look at a stairwell very carefully. I always do. It's a survival habit. Do not be facetious, Archie. I'll try, I said. No promises. Wolfe adjusted his position by a fraction of an inch. That meant he was thinking hard. Elias Monroe's death was declared accidental. That is convenient. It is also improbable. People fall down subway stairs every day, I said. People also lie every day, Wolfe said. The two facts are not mutually exclusive. He reached for his beer, found it missing, and frowned. Fritz, he called. In the kitchen, sir. Bring beer. Immediately, sir. I grabbed my hat. Anything else while I'm out risking my neck? Yes, Wolfe said. Observe everything. Especially what seems irrelevant. That narrows it down to the entire city. The subway station was one of those cheerful little underground caverns that smelled of damp concrete and regret. The stairwell in question was tucked between a newsstand and a wall plastered with peeling advertisements promising better lives through better soap. I stood at the top and looked down. Concrete steps. Metal railing. Fluorescent lights flickering like they were tired of the job. If a man fell here, he'd bounce, roll, and break something important. A transit cop leaned against the wall, watching commuters like they might explode. Excuse me, I said. Mind if I ask you something about an accident that happened here a few weeks back? He gave me a look that suggested he minded very much. You a reporter? No, I said. I'm worse. I ask questions. That got a reluctant smirk. Name? Goodwin. He shrugged. Guy slipped. Late night. No witnesses. Drunk? Clean as a choir boy. Funny, I said. Most accidents like that come with a couple of drinks attached. Funny city, he said. Things happen. I nodded, filed that away, and walked down the steps slowly. Halfway down, I saw it, a dark smear along the edge of one step, too faint to notice unless you were looking for it. Ink. Not blood. Ink. I crouched, ran a finger along it, sniffed. Printer's ink. Thick stuff. A man didn't bleed ink when he fell. But a portfolio might. Monroe's apartment was 3 blocks away, a narrow walk-up that had seen better decades. The landlady was built like a filing cabinet and about as friendly. You a cop? She asked. No, I said. I smile more. She snorted. He was quiet. Paid on time. Didn't have friends. Anybody visit him the night he died? She hesitated. Just long enough. A man, she said finally. Well dressed. Didn't look like the type to climb stairs. What time? Late. Maybe 10. Did you see his face? She shook her head. But I saw his shoes. That's a start, I said. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe was in his element, beer restored, orchids tended, brain fully engaged. I gave him the report while Fritz served lunch. Ink, Wolfe said thoughtfully. On the stairs. Printer's ink, I said. Not subway grime. And a visitor. And amended records, I added. People rewriting history with better paper. Wolfe speared a sausage. The map was not the first draft, Archie. It was the final proof. I frowned. Meaning? Meaning Monroe discovered the error before Haversham. He likely confronted someone. And got edited out, I said. Precisely. The phone rang. Fritz answered, listened, and handed it to Wolfe. Yes. Wolfe said. He listened. His expression didn't change, which meant something had. I see, he said finally. Thank you. He hung up. That, he said, was the medical examiner. I leaned forward. And? The cause of death remains accidental. However, Monroe's hands bore traces of ink. I grinned without humor. So he was carrying something when he fell. Or was pushed, Wolfe said. While carrying something. I thought of the smear on the step. A portfolio hitting concrete. Someone wanted what was in that folder, I said. And didn't want Monroe talking. Or publishing, Wolfe said. Cartographers are dangerous, Archie. They make invisible things visible. The doorbell rang. Sharp. Urgent. Fritz answered. A moment later, Daniel Haversham stood in the doorway, looking worse than yesterday. They were at my office, he said without preamble. 2 men. Asking questions. Did they introduce themselves? I asked. No, Haversham said. They corrected me. Wolfe steepled his fingers. Corrected you? They said, Haversham swallowed, there is no error. Silence settled in the room, thick as cigar smoke. Did they threaten you? Wolfe asked. No, Haversham said. They smiled. Wolfe nodded. That is worse. I leaned back, hands behind my head. Let me guess. They had nice shoes. Haversham blinked. Yes. Welcome to the club, I said. Wolfe closed his eyes. Mr. Haversham, you will move into the spare room upstairs. What? Haversham said. Protection, Wolfe said. Also convenience. I dislike unnecessary travel. Haversham looked at me. I shrugged. Room service is good. Don't touch the orchids. That night, I sat at my desk, listening to the city hum outside and the brownstone breathe around me. Somewhere below, Wolfe was rereading maps older than both of us, looking for a line that didn't belong. A man was dead because of ink on paper. Another man was scared for the same reason. And someone out there was very invested in keeping a mistake buried. In New York, that meant the mistake was valuable. And valuable mistakes don't stay buried for long. Chapter 3, Lines, Lies, and Longitudes. If you ever want to watch a man insult the 20th century without moving a muscle, give Nero Wolfe a map and a reason to distrust it. I came down to the office after breakfast to find him already at work, which meant the case had officially become interesting. The desk was covered with paper, maps, photocopies, city plats, and one large magnifying glass Wolfe normally reserved for stamps and moral failings. The air smelled faintly of orchids and strongly of Wolfe's displeasure. You're early, I said. I have not slept, Wolfe replied. That was his version of fireworks. Saturday, I'll alert the newspapers. Do not be tiresome. Sit down. I did, and watched him manipulate the magnifying glass with fingers surprisingly delicate for a man who treated furniture like an immovable ally. These lines, Wolfe said, tapping a map with one thick finger. They are inconsistent. I leaned over. Looks like a lot of streets to me. Exactly, Wolfe said. Too many. Or rather, one too few. He slid one map over another with surgical precision. This is a 1890 reconstruction. This is the 1902 rezoning map. Observe the alignment. I observed. It took a minute, but then I saw it. A narrow corridor of nothingness where a property boundary should have been. The strip, I said. The one that isn't supposed to exist. Yes, Wolfe said. Except it does. Or rather, it did, until someone made it disappear. I grinned. Urban vanishing acts. Always popular. Not an act, Wolfe said. A necessity. The phone rang. Fritz answered, murmured, and handed it to me. Goodwin. A voice crackled. This is Inspector Kramer. I straightened. Morning, Inspector. You calling to invite us to tea? I'm calling, Kramer said, to ask why a man under your roof was seen arguing with a city clerk last night. I glanced at Wolfe. He hadn't moved. Haversham? I said. Yes, Kramer said. He left your house around 9. Went to the municipal archives. Raised hell. That's initiative, I said. It's also risky, Kramer said. The clerk he argued with. Missing. That got Wolfe's attention. His eyes opened. Missing how? I asked. Didn't come home. Didn't show up for work. Left his coat behind. I whistled softly. That's inconvenient. You know something, Kramer said. We always do, I said. We just don't know what it means yet. He hung up without saying goodbye. Typical. Wolfe folded his hands. Archie. You will go to the municipal archives. Again. I said. I was there last year. They still hate me. You will go anyway, Wolfe said. Find the clerk. Or find who wants him unfound. The municipal archives was a building that believed dust was a legitimate security measure. I signed in, smiled at a woman who looked like she'd been born behind a desk, and asked about the missing clerk. Mr. Larkin, she said. He took the night shift yesterday. Still on it? I asked. She frowned. He shouldn't be. I wandered through rows of metal shelves and the smell of paper old enough to vote. In a back room, I found Larkin's desk. Neat. Too neat. Drawers empty except for a single pencil shaved down to a nub. No coat. No bag. But in the trash can, crumpled carbon copies. I fished them out. Property amendments. Handwritten notes in the margin. Correct per directive, one read. Directive from who? A man coughed behind me. I turned to see a tall fellow with a city badge and shoes that cost more than my first car. Looking for something, he asked. History, I said. It keeps changing. He smiled thinly. That's progress. What's your name? I asked. Call me Mr. Birch. Funny, I said. You don't look like a tree. His smile vanished. You should leave. I did. Quickly. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe listened to my report while Havisham paced like a trapped cat. They took him, Havisham said. Just like Monroe. Possibly, Wolfe said. Or possibly he is hiding. Hiding from who? Havisham demanded. Wolfe's eyes flicked to the maps. From correction. I poured myself milk and leaned on the desk. I met a guy at the archives. Birch. Expensive shoes. Cheap threats. Wolfe nodded. A custodian of silence. And Kramer thinks we're stirring trouble, I added. Kramer always thinks that, Wolfe said. Sometimes he is correct. The doorbell rang again. Late afternoon this time. Fritz answered, ushering in a woman with sharp eyes and a sharper hat. Ms. Eleanor Price, Fritz announced. Historian. She didn't sit. I want to know why you're interfering with city records. Wolfe smiled faintly. Madam, I interfere with many things. Please be specific. She tossed a folder onto the desk. Because that map threatens a redevelopment project worth millions. Millions are common, Wolfe said. Truth is rare. Her eyes flicked to Havisham. He made a mistake. No, Havisham said quietly. I didn't. Price laughed. Everyone does. Wolfe leaned forward. Ms. Price, you are here because you are afraid. She bristled. Of what? Of lines, Wolfe said. And what they reveal. She left without another word. I watched the door close. We've got a real estate angle, a city clerk missing, a dead cartographer, and a historian with money on the line. Yes, Wolfe said. And still no murderer. Night fell. The city outside turned smoky and secretive. Taxis hissed past. Somewhere, a diner served bad coffee to worse intentions. At 10, the phone rang again. This time, it was Havisham's office. A voice on the other end said only one thing before hanging up. The map will be corrected. I looked at Wolfe. They're getting impatient. So am I, Wolfe said. He stood. Just for a moment. Enough to make the room feel different. Archie, he said, tomorrow we will redraw the city. I smiled. With erasers? No, Wolfe said. With people. And that was when I knew Chapter 3 had ended, and the city had started pushing back. Chapter 4, The City Beneath the City. If New York has a soul, it keeps it underground. That was my working theory as I rode a downtown subway car that rattled like it had arthritis and smelled like damp wool and yesterday's arguments. Wolfe had sent me out again, which meant he was firmly planted in his red leather armchair with a beer at hand and a city's worth of facts marching in formation inside his head. I had the marching orders: follow the strip. The strip, as Wolfe now called it with the disdain normally reserved for politicians, wasn't much on paper, just a sliver of land erased from official memory sometime around 1902. But it had teeth. One man was dead, another missing, and at least 3 well-dressed people were sweating through expensive clothing because of it. The subway let me off near an address Wolfe had circled in red pencil. He didn't circle lightly. This one was an old service entrance beneath a block of respectable buildings that advertised dentists, insurance brokers, and moral certainty. I found a steel door marked City Maintenance, authorized personnel only. I authorized myself. Inside, the air changed immediately, cooler, heavier, with the smell of wet stone and old decisions. A narrow corridor stretched away, lit by bulbs that had given up hope. Pipes ran along the ceiling like exposed nerves. At the far end, voices. I flattened myself against the wall and listened. 2 men. One calm. One nervous. Told you it was sealed, the nervous one said. Nothing stays sealed, the calm one replied. Especially mistakes. I leaned forward just enough to see shoes. 1 pair expensive. The other city issue. Birch and Larkin. So the missing clerk wasn't missing. He was misplaced. I stepped out. Gentlemen, I said. You're standing on history. They both spun. Birch recovered fast. Larkin didn't. You shouldn't be here, Birch said. I get that a lot, I said. Usually right before someone explains why. Larkin's eyes flicked between us. I didn't tell him, he blurted. I didn't tell anyone. Birch's jaw tightened. Shut up. Too late, I said. Now we're all talking. Birch smiled thinly. Mr. Goodwin, isn't it? You work for Nero Wolfe. Guilty, I said. He sends his regrets. And me. Birch took a step closer. You're trespassing. So were you, I said. 120 years ago. That stopped him. Just a fraction. Enough. Larkin swallowed. They told me it was just paperwork, he said. An old corridor. An abandoned easement. And now? I asked. Now, he said, they want it gone. Why? I asked. Birch answered. Because it leads somewhere inconvenient. Before I could press, footsteps echoed behind me. More than 1 pair. I backed off. Strategically. Gentlemen, I said, I'll let you get back to burying the city. But you should know, Wolfe already knows. Birch's smile vanished. I left before anyone decided to correct me permanently. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe listened without interruption, which is always a bad sign for someone else. A subterranean corridor, he said when I finished. Precisely where the strip would have been. And Larkin's alive, I added. Just hidden. For the moment, Wolfe said. That is generous of them. Haversham sat rigid on the edge of his chair. It's real, he whispered. The strip wasn't just theoretical. No, Wolfe said. It was functional. The phone rang. Fritz answered. This time, he didn't hand it to Wolfe. He held the receiver like it might bite. For Mr. Goodwin, he said. I took it. Goodwin. A woman's voice, breathless. They're sealing it. Tonight. Who's this? I asked. Eleanor Price, she said. I shouldn't be calling. But you need to stop them. The line went dead. I looked at Wolfe. She's cracking. Wolfe nodded. Conscience is inconvenient. That is why it is often buried. Like the corridor, I said. Like the truth, Wolfe corrected. Night settled in, heavy and expectant. Outside, taxis prowled like predators. Somewhere, a diner flipped burgers for people who didn't want to go home yet. I went back out. Again. This time, I brought a flashlight and a bad feeling. The maintenance door was open. Inside, men were working, cement mixers humming softly, shovels scraping. The corridor was being filled in. History reduced to rubble. Larkin stood off to the side, pale and shaking. Birch supervised. I stepped in. You guys ever hear of zoning appeals? Birch turned slowly. You're persistent. I'm paid to be, I said. Then you're underpaid, he said, and nodded. Two men moved toward me. I moved faster. Flashlight to the eyes. Elbow to the ribs. A scuffle in a space that hadn't seen one since Theodore Roosevelt had teeth. I didn't win. I survived. They threw me out onto the street like trash that talked too much. I lay there for a minute, tasting concrete and pride. When I got back to the brownstone, Wolfe took one look at me and frowned. Your tie is crooked, he said. Thank you, I said. They're sealing the corridor. Yes, Wolfe said. I anticipated that. Then why send me? I demanded. Because, Wolfe said calmly, I needed confirmation. He reached for his beer. They are afraid, Archie. Not of exposure, but of precedent. Meaning? I asked. Meaning that strip is not merely land, Wolfe said. It is proof. Of a decision made quietly. Of ownership transferred without consent. And someone made a killing, I said. Several, Wolfe said. Over decades. The phone rang again. This time, Wolfe answered. Yes, he said. He listened. His eyes narrowed. I see, he said. No, Inspector. I do not. He hung up. Kramer? I asked. Yes, Wolfe said. He is displeased. Larkin has vanished again. Vanished how? Completely, Wolfe said. This time, I fear, permanently. The room went quiet. The orchids upstairs breathed softly, unaware. So, I said, we've got a dead cartographer, a missing clerk, possibly dead, a buried corridor, and a city trying to erase itself. Yes, Wolfe said. And still someone believes this can be corrected with concrete. He leaned back, massive and immovable. Archie, he said, tomorrow we stop chasing the city beneath the city. I raised an eyebrow. What do we chase instead? Wolfe smiled faintly. The obsession that built it. Outside, New York kept its secrets close. But something deep underground had shifted. And once the ground moves, the map is never the same again. Chapter 5, Orchids and Obsessions. If you want to know how seriously Nero Wolfe takes a problem, don't look at his face, look at his schedule. When the orchids get more attention than usual, it means the world has begun to offend him personally. I found him in the plant rooms after breakfast, standing like a benevolent tyrant among the green ranks. The air was thick with damp earth and that peculiar orchid smell, sweet, precise, and faintly judgmental. Wolfe held a small silver watering can as if it were a ceremonial object. You're avoiding me, I said. I am thinking, Wolfe replied. The orchids are thinking with me. I leaned against a bench. Then they should start paying rent. Wolfe ignored that. He adjusted a leaf by a quarter inch. The city has committed an error, Archie. That's not news, I said. It does it every day before lunch. This one, Wolfe said, was not accidental. It was aesthetic. I blinked. You lost me somewhere around aesthetic. Wolfe finally turned. Maps are representations. They are arguments disguised as facts. Someone argued, long ago, that this strip of land should not exist. And they won. By erasing it, I said. By reimagining it, Wolfe corrected. That requires obsession. We went downstairs. Fritz had laid out coffee and Wolf's preferred breakfast, untouched. That alone told me the case had crawled inside Wolf's head and was rearranging the furniture. "Let's review," I said, sitting. "Monroe's dead. Larkin's probably dead. Haversham's scared. Birch's got shoes that could fund a small war. Eleanor Price is cracking. And someone keeps pouring concrete on history." "Yes," Wolfe said. "And none of it is primarily about money." I stared at him. "Now you've lost me completely." Wolfe picked up a map, not the strip this time, but a full city grid, yellowed and beautiful. "Money is a consequence. Control is the motive." "Control of what?" I asked. "Legacy," Wolfe said. "Narrative. Permanence." The phone rang. Fritz answered, then handed it to me. "Goodwin." "Archie," Inspector Kramer growled. "You're going to stop interfering." "Always nice to hear from you too," I said. "You had a scuffle last night," he said. "Witnesses." "Fans," I said. "Larkin is gone," Kramer said. "And I don't like coincidences." "Neither do we," I said. "But you don't like us either, so here we are." He hung up. Wolfe took a sip of beer, late, but deliberate. "Kramer is correct about one thing." "That'll be a first," I said. "We are interfering," Wolfe said. "Which means we are close." Haversham came in, pale but composed. "I've been thinking," he said. "About Monroe." "Excellent," Wolfe said. "Join the club." "He wasn't obsessed with money," Haversham said. "He was obsessed with accuracy. With restoring the city as it was meant to be understood." Wolfe nodded. "A dangerous impulse." "Why?" Haversham asked. "Because," Wolfe said, "it threatens those who have built themselves upon a lie." I leaned back. "So who's the biggest liar in the room?" "Not a who," Wolfe said. "A when." That was Wolfe for you, solving murders like a philosopher with a grudge. He sent me out again. This time, to Eleanor Price's office. Her building was all glass and confidence, the kind of place that smelled like fresh paint and ambition. She received me standing, arms crossed. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "Story of my life," I said. She sighed. "You don't understand what you're uncovering." "Try me," I said. She walked to the window. The corridor, your strip, was part of a service network. Used briefly. Then abandoned. By who? I asked. By the city, she said. Or rather, by the men who ran it. And then erased, I said. Yes, she said. Because it conflicted with a vision. Whose vision? I pressed. She turned. A planner. A man obsessed with symmetry. With the idea that the city could be corrected. Name? I asked. She hesitated. Not yet. That told me plenty. When I got back, Wolfe was in his chair, eyes closed, fingers steepled. The orchids upstairs were done for the day. So was Wolfe's patience. Obsession, he said before I could speak. An individual who believed the city must conform to his design. And who's still protecting that design, I added. Yes, Wolfe said. Or rather, his successors are. Heredity? I asked. Intellectual, Wolfe said. And institutional. The doorbell rang. Fritz answered. Inspector Kramer came in, looking like a man who had eaten showing up and regretted it. Wolfe, he said. You're sitting on something. Yes, Wolfe said. As usual. Kramer glared. Another body was pulled from the river this morning. Haversham stiffened. Larkin? Unidentified, Kramer said. But the timing stinks. Wolfe opened his eyes. Inspector, the murderer is not improvising. He is editing. Editing what? Kramer snapped. The past, Wolfe said. Kramer snorted. That's not a motive that holds up in court. No, Wolfe said calmly. But it holds up bodies. Silence followed. Even Kramer felt it. That night, the city outside sounded restless. I sat at my desk, flipping through notes, watching shadows move where they shouldn't. Somewhere, a diner radio played something slow and lonely. Wolfe called me over. Archie. Consider this. He handed me a map. Not of land, but of utilities. Old ones. The corridor was not merely a passage, Wolfe said. It was a conduit. For what? I asked. Influence, Wolfe said. Access. Leverage. And someone used it, I said, then buried it. Yes, Wolfe said. And now someone else has discovered the burial was imperfect. I thought of Monroe's ink, Larkin's fear, Birch's smile. So the killer isn't trying to get rich, I said. He's trying to keep the story straight. His story, Wolfe said. The phone rang one last time that night. Fritz answered, then hesitated. For Mr. Wolfe, he said. Wolfe took it. Listened. His face hardened. I see, he said. No. Do nothing. He hung up. What? I asked. Someone has attempted to revise the map again, Wolfe said. How? I asked. By fire, Wolfe said. I stood. Where? Wolfe looked at me, eyes sharp. Archie, he said, the city is correcting itself. Outside, sirens wailed, distant but deliberate. And somewhere between the orchids upstairs and the burning paper downtown, obsession had crossed the line from ink to blood. Chapter 6, A Second Correction. The fire didn't burn the city. It singed its memory. That was Wolfe's phrase, delivered over a late dinner he barely touched while Fritz hovered like a worried parent. I'd come back smelling like smoke and bad coffee, having stood across the street from the Municipal Archives Annex while firemen did their solemn dance and reporters sharpened their pencils. They went after the paper, I said. Not the building. Of course, Wolfe replied. Arson is crude. Editing requires discrimination. I sat, rubbed my eyes, and watched him drain half a glass of beer with the seriousness of a man taking medicine. You realize someone nearly turned me into a footnote. Indeed, Wolfe said. I am displeased. That was his version of a siren. The annex had lost a room, records from 1895 to 1910, mostly zoning, easements, infrastructure. Conveniently inconvenient. The kind of fire that didn't scream panic but whispered intention. Inspector Kramer had been there, scowling through the smoke like it personally offended him. You almost got yourself killed, he'd told me. I try not to, I said. But it's a competitive city. Now, back in the brownstone, Wolfe rearranged papers with deliberate slowness. The orchids upstairs were done for the night. Fritz had retreated. The city outside pressed its face against the windows, curious and unrepentant. They're accelerating, I said. First Monroe. Then Larkin. Now fire. Yes, Wolfe said. Because the map persists. You really think a drawing is scaring them this much? Wolfe looked at me. The drawing is proof. Proof terrifies those who rely on denial. The phone rang. I reached for it. Goodwin. A pause. Breathing. Then a voice I didn't recognize. Male. Controlled. Educated. You should stop. I smiled without humor. That's the consensus. You were nearly hurt tonight, the voice said. That was unfortunate. So was the fire, I said. Yes, the voice agreed. It was imprecise. Who's this? I asked. Someone who appreciates order, he said. You and Mr. Wolfe are creating disorder. The line went dead. I stared at the receiver, then looked at Wolfe. We've got a caller who likes neat handwriting. Wolfe nodded. And dislikes improvisation. Meaning? I asked. Meaning, Wolfe said, he did not intend for you to be present. That sank in. So I was collateral damage. Yes, Wolfe said. Which means he is capable of more. As if summoned, the doorbell rang. This time, it was Havisham. He looked like he'd aged 10 years since breakfast. His coat was dusty. His hands shook. They came to my office, he said. Again. What did they correct this time? I asked. They offered me a job, Havisham said. To redraw the map. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. On what terms? To eliminate the error, Havisham said. Quietly. With credit. I laughed. That's generous. Blood money with a byline. I refused, Havisham said. Of course you did, Wolfe said. Which means they will not ask again. Havisham looked at me. I think they followed me. Get comfortable, I said. You live here now. That night, the brownstone felt smaller. Shadows lingered longer. Every sound from the street carried intent. I checked the locks twice and the desk drawer once. Around midnight, the phone rang again. Fritz answered, then hurried in. Mr. Wolfe. It is the police. Wolfe took the call. Yes, he said. He listened. His face hardened. I see, he said. Yes. Thank you. He hung up. Well? I asked. An attempt was made on your life, Archie, Wolfe said calmly. I blinked. I thought that was earlier. This was more deliberate, Wolfe said. A taxi. Faulty brakes. I felt a cold ripple. That cab on 42nd? Yes, Wolfe said. The driver reported it before engaging the vehicle. You were listed as the passenger. I sat down slowly. So now it's personal. It was always personal, Wolfe said. You simply did not realize it. I stared at him. You're enjoying this. Enjoyment is irrelevant, Wolfe said. But clarity is satisfying. I went to the window. Outside, a lone taxi idled, exhaust curling like a question mark. The city pretended nothing had happened. Someone's correcting faster, I said. And sloppier. Yes, Wolfe said. Which suggests pressure. From us? From time, Wolfe said. Old lies require constant maintenance. I turned back. So what's the play? Wolfe leaned back, steepled his fingers. We reversed the process. Burn their files? I asked. No, Wolfe said. We publish. I stared. You want to put the error everywhere. Precisely, Wolfe said. If the truth becomes ubiquitous, it can no longer be erased discreetly. That's risky, I said. Yes, Wolfe said. Which is why they will attempt another correction. And we'll be waiting, I said. Exactly, Wolfe said. Sleep was a rumor that night. I dozed at my desk, hat over my eyes, half expecting the building to decide I was an inconvenience. Sometime near dawn, footsteps on the stoop jolted me awake. I had just enough time to stand before the front window exploded inward. Glass rained like icy applause. I hit the floor. A brick skidded across the rug with a note tied to it. Wolfe's voice boomed from the stairs. Archie. I'm alive, I shouted. He came down, enormous and furious, surveying the damage with the disdain of a man whose house had been insulted. I picked up the note. One line, typed. Stop revising the city. I snorted. They're getting poetic. Wolfe took the note, examined it, then nodded. This was unnecessary. For them, I said. Or for us. For them, Wolfe said. They have revealed urgency. Sirens approached in the distance. Kramer would be along shortly, smelling blood and paperwork. Wolfe turned to me. Archie, they are no longer controlling the tempo. Good, I said. I hate being edited. Wolfe allowed himself the ghost of a smile. Tomorrow, he said, we convene. Who? I asked. Everyone, Wolfe said. All the cartographers of this deception. I looked at the shattered window, the city breathing cold air into the room. About time, I said. Outside, dawn crept over the rooftops, indifferent and exact. The city had tried to correct us again. It had failed. And now, it would have to explain itself. Chapter 7, The Final Draft. If you want to see Nero Wolfe at his most dangerous, don't watch him when he's angry. Watch him when he's prepared. By 11 that morning, the brownstone had been transformed from a dignified residence into a civilized ambush. Chairs were arranged with intention. The desk was cleared except for a neat stack of maps and documents, aligned with almost military precision. The broken window had been boarded up, not because Wolfe cared about the glass, but because he refused to let disorder linger where it had no intellectual justification. The orchids upstairs had been tended early. Wolfe never confronted human folly without first reassuring himself that nature could still be trusted. I stood by the door, checking names off a mental list as they arrived. Inspector Kramer came first, scowling like a man who suspected the furniture of conspiracy. I don't like this, he said. No one ever does, I said. That's how you know it's important. Daniel Haversham followed, pale but composed, clutching his portfolio like a shield. Eleanor Price arrived next, cool and sharp, eyes already cataloging exits. A city lawyer I hadn't met before came in behind her, smelling of cologne and confidence. And finally, Birch. He paused just inside the door, taking in the room, Wolfe, and me. So, he said lightly, this is the famous Nero Wolfe. Wolfe inclined his head by a fraction. You are punctual. That suggests anxiety. Birch smiled. Or curiosity. Sit down, Wolfe said. We will determine which. Everyone sat. No one relaxed. Wolfe waited. That's his favorite tactic, letting silence stretch until it becomes accusatory. The city outside hummed faintly, taxis whispering past, the ordinary world blissfully unaware that its secrets were about to be unpacked like luggage at customs. Mr. Haversham, Wolfe began, published a map. Haversham swallowed. Yes. That map contained an error, Wolfe continued. Or rather, it refused to perpetuate one. Eleanor Price crossed her legs. You're being dramatic. Madam, Wolfe said, I am being precise. He gestured with one finger. The strip of land erased in 1902 existed. It was functional. It served purposes not reflected in the public record. The city lawyer cleared his throat. This is speculative. No, Wolfe said. This is documented. He slid a folder across the desk. Kramer leaned forward despite himself. These are amended zoning orders, Wolfe said. Filed after the fact. Initialed by a clerk who later vanished. Price stiffened. Birch did not. Elias Monroe discovered this, Wolfe said. He died. Birch shrugged. Accidents happen. Yes, Wolfe said. Particularly when portfolios are involved. That landed. Birch's eyes flicked to me. I smiled politely. Wolfe went on. Mr. Larkin, the clerk, attempted to retract his amendments. He disappeared. Kramer slammed a hand on the chair arm. You're saying murder. I am saying correction, Wolfe replied calmly. The room tensed. Someone, Wolfe said, believed the city had been drawn incorrectly. That its hidden infrastructure, corridors, conduits, access points, compromised a vision. A vision of what? Price snapped. Order, Wolfe said. Symmetry. A city that matched a plan conceived by a man who mistook aesthetics for morality. The city lawyer scoffed. You're talking about theory. I am talking about obsession, Wolfe said. He turned his gaze to Birch. You are not motivated by money. Birch's smile tightened. No. No, Wolfe said. You are motivated by stewardship. You see yourself as a caretaker of an idea. An idea inherited. Price inhaled sharply. That's absurd. Is it? Wolfe said. You, madam, protect the narrative academically. You smooth contradictions. You rationalize erasures. But you do not kill. Her face went pale. Kramer looked between them. Then who does? Wolfe raised a hand. Not yet. I shifted my weight. The tension in the room had gone from intellectual to animal. Everyone was calculating distance, alibis, exits. Someone attempted arson, Wolfe continued. Someone sabotaged brakes. Someone threw a brick through my window. Birch laughed softly. You're flattering yourself. No, Wolfe said. I am irritating you. That did it. Birch stood. This is pointless, he said. You have nothing. Wolfe nodded. On the contrary. I have timing. He leaned back into his chair, massive and unyielding. The next attempt to correct the map will occur today. Silence snapped. What attempt? Price demanded. To retrieve the original proof sheets, Wolfe said. The ones Mr. Havisham hid after the fire. All eyes swung to Havisham. You said they were destroyed, Price said. I lied, Havisham said quietly. Birch's hand moved, just a little. Toward his coat. I moved faster. The gun came out of the desk drawer like it had been waiting. Easy, I said. We're editing behavior now. Kramer was on his feet, badge out, hand on his own weapon. Birch froze. Wolfe closed his eyes briefly, as if disappointed by the predictability. You see, Wolfe said, obsession narrows possibility. You could not allow the map to persist. Nor could you allow it to vanish publicly. Birch's voice was tight. You can't prove anything. Wolfe opened his eyes. Not yet. He glanced at the clock. But you are late. Right on cue, the doorbell rang. Fritz answered. Inspector, he announced. Another inspector. And 2 officers. The room exploded into motion, voices, badges, accusations. Birch sank back into his chair, face carefully blank. As the police moved in, Wolfe sat still, a monument among chaos. I leaned toward him. You didn't actually reveal the killer. Wolfe murmured, of course not. Then what was this? A revision, Wolfe said. The final draft requires one more confirmation. Outside, sirens wailed again, closer this time. I looked at the maps on the desk. Lines intersecting. Truth emerging not all at once, but piece by piece. So, I said, we're not done. Wolfe's lips curved faintly. On the contrary, Archie. We are nearly finished. The city exhaled outside, unaware that its secrets were being boxed up, labeled, and prepared for delivery. Tomorrow, the map would be complete. And someone would finally be placed exactly where they belonged. Chapter 8, The Map is Not the Territory. By the time the city finished waking up, Nero Wolfe had already finished thinking. That's one of the things I've learned working for him, Wolfe does not rush conclusions. He allows them to ripen, like one of his orchids, fed, pruned, and left alone until it is impossible for them to be anything else. I was drinking my second cup of coffee and pretending not to look at the boarded-up window when Wolfe summoned me. Archie, he said, we are done. I raised an eyebrow. That's what you said yesterday. Yesterday included a gun. Yes, Wolfe said. Today will include clarity. Inspector Kramer arrived 10 minutes later, looking tired in the way only a man who hates being right can look. He dropped into a chair without being invited, which meant he knew he was walking into a confession rather than a conversation. All right, he said. Talk. Wolfe did not waste words. The murderer, he said, is Mr. Birch. Birch, now under police supervision in an adjoining room, stiffened visibly through the open door. Kramer grunted. You're going to have to do better than that. I intend to, Wolfe said calmly. He gestured to the maps laid out on the desk, final, aligned, complete. Birch did not inherit money, Wolfe said. He inherited an idea. His father, an urban planner of considerable influence at the turn of the century, believed the city should be rational. Clean. Symmetrical. Price shifted in her seat. She knew this story. The subterranean corridor, Wolfe continued, was an embarrassment. A compromise. It allowed access, leverage, movement, things that disrupted the illusion of order. So it was erased. Not physically at first, but administratively. Kramer nodded slowly. Zoning changes. Amended retroactively, Wolfe said. With the assistance of a clerk, Larkin, who later attempted to undo his work. And got killed, I said. Yes, Wolfe said. But not before Monroe discovered the original documents. Birch laughed bitterly. You're romanticizing. No, Wolfe said. I am simplifying. He leaned forward. Monroe confronted you. He intended to publish. You pushed him down the subway stairs. Birch opened his mouth. Wolfe raised a hand. Do not insult us with denial. The ink on the stair was from his portfolio. The timing, the location, the absence of alcohol, elementary. Kramer exhaled. And the fire? A correction, Wolfe said. As was the sabotage of Archie's taxi. As was the attempt to coerce Mr. Haversham. Birch's shoulders slumped. I didn't kill Monroe for money, he said quietly. I killed him because he was wrong. There it is, Wolfe said. The obsession. Birch looked up. The city is chaos. Someone has to impose meaning. Meaning, Wolfe said, is not imposed. It is discovered. Silence fell. Heavy. Final. Kramer stood. All right. You're under arrest. As Birch was led away, Eleanor Price stared at the maps like they might still change their minds. I didn't know it would go this far, she said. Wolfe regarded her coolly. That is the common excuse of collaborators. She flinched. When the police were gone and the house settled back into its familiar breathing rhythm, I poured myself a drink and looked at Wolfe. So, I said, the map was never about land. No, Wolfe said. It was about control. And the title? I asked. The cartographer's error. Wolfe allowed himself a rare, small smile. The error was assuming that one can redraw reality without consequence. I leaned back, listening to the city outside reclaim its usual noise, taxis, horns, footsteps, arguments. New York didn't care who tried to correct it. It endured. You know, I said, for a while there I thought this was about money. Wolfe snorted. Money is vulgar. This was art. Bad art, I said. All obsession is bad art, Wolfe replied. Fritz came in with beer. The orchids upstairs were already waiting for their afternoon attention. Routine restored. As I finished my drink, I glanced once more at the maps, now harmless, just paper and ink again. But I knew better. Maps don't just tell you where you are. They tell you who's lying about it. And in this city, that's always worth knowing.
If you like our story, please like, share and subscribe.